Hello, I'm Damian Navarro, the Executive Director of Outfest. This week, Outfest joined with The Hollywood Reporter and Film Independent to launch United in Pride, a month-long showcase of feature films, shorts, live discussions, and special events that celebrates, elevates, and amplifies the voices of LGBTQ storytellers. You can freely access all of the content at unitedinpridefest.com. One film that Outfest is very excited to showcase is the feature documentary PIER KIDS. We hosted the world premiere of this film at our 2019 Outfest Los Angeles LGBTQ Film Festival, where it received critical raves. This is a film that could not be more relevant to our current national conversation. It centers on the young Black, queer, and trans voices at a time when they urgently need to be heard. We invited award-winning producer Effie Brown to join PIER KIDS director Elegance Bratton and producer Chester Algernal to talk about the film. Please watch this conversation along with the film at unitedinpridefest.com. That's up for free until Wednesday, June 17th, when we'll be hosting another live Q&A with Elegance, Chester, and participants from the film at 5:30 p.m. Pacific Time. This will also be simulcast across all of Outfest channels. Thank you for tuning in.
Hey, first of all, I just want to say I'm really excited to be talking to you both. And I know that we're working together, and we'll talk about that a little later. But it really, watching PIER KIDS again last night, really made me really see what a force of nature you both are as talented filmmakers, and you got something to say. So I just want to be versus being like, I'm glad that I'm lobbing on at the right time. Really wonderful. And then, but I'm going to start maybe the conversation. It's going to seem a little, it's going to be a flow of a conversation is what I'd like to have happen. And I want to talk a bit about, and we're going to go into the basic things that people always ask, you know what I mean? Of like how, what, why, how much, all of that good stuff. But the thing that's on my heart that I have to talk about, and it devastated me, and it's something that you, that sort of is a bit of like melded throughout the entire documentary, is how you treated that last scene and that last segment. And I know, and it's just a little bit, I know I'm coming at the very, very end of your movie, but it was so like, pop, pop, powerful, where you see that young boy, walking through, and there's something, I don't know if he was deaf or mentally, I don't know what it was, but you saw the kindness from the police brutality, which is throughout your entire film, that I definitely want to talk about, that you did this before it was as prevalent as we're talking about now, but also how someone helped him, and then how you beautifully, like you did with the rest of the characters in this movie, let them be. You let them express themselves. You actually caught them. Can you talk a little bit about that last section?
Sure.
You're like, maybe.
Yeah, totally unexpected. No one's ever asked me that question before.
Really? Well, I'm glad to be the first, because it's really, well, we'll dive a little deeper. Sorry, go ahead.
But I appreciate that question, because I guess first off, when I was making the movie, I was very much thinking about the history of Stonewall and the gay rights movement, and how, Vera Marsha P. Johnson, these two women of color, trans women of color, started the riot that changed the world for gay people,
Yes.
And so, like, thinking about them and thinking about the fact that it was a rebellion, that it was, 5-6 days of rioting that caused, gay pride to happen.
Yes.
Caused gays in the military, gay marriage, all that to happen. I just was so acutely aware, because of my personal experience, how the conditions that gave birth to Sylvia and Marcia, that made them family, how those conditions really hadn't abated in any meaningful way. And if anything, after crack cocaine and, Reagan and HIV, those conditions got a lot worse on the pier.
Mm-hmm.
So every Pride, I just kept asking myself, what happens if they riot? What happens if all of these kids who are walking by these cars, instead of just kind of beating on these cars and twerking on these cars, were to, pick up a stone,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So a part of me was filming with the reasonable expectation that could happen at any moment, and to some degree the desire for it to happen, because it's a pretty sobering as a Black gay person who was homeless on the pier to go there now as a filmmaker for the first time and to see, like, I mean, just, I started to hate dogs while making this movie, like little specialty breed dogs. I started to despise them because you would see the white people with their dogs, you know,
better.
with their dogs and feet, and the dogs are doing tricks. They're like, oh, Moxie, you got so big. And meanwhile, like in the back of them, there would be like a Black trans kid starving, one of their neighbors, you know, the same men who are like ogling each other's pets at night are out there, you know, exploiting those kids, buying sex from these kids during the day, rather, with their dogs, at night, buying sex from these kids. So, you know, with all of that being true, it just always felt like, I mean, and things happened on the pier. Like, but right before I started filming, the kids, a young woman experienced a transphobic event inside the Dunkin' Donuts in the corner of 7th and Christopher. And she was so offended that it just kind of exploded into a situation where the whole Dunkin' Donuts got obliterated. Like the glass out the windows, chairs tossed, cops by the dozens coming to break it up. And, you know, then another time one of the kids I knew, but I missed it, they threw a chair in the window of an Italian restaurant down there. So I was just kind of thinking to myself, I don't want to miss it this time if it happens. And then something more kind of magical happened than I thought I was going to get.
Yeah.
I also think that Elegance cared about the subject matter, and he cared about the people that he was filming, and he is the character. The camera is a character itself, which is him.
Right.
EDP the movie, and I'm gonna let him tell you about what Crystal asked him before she decided to actually allow him to capture her story.
I definitely want to talk about that. Mm-hmm.
It was rules that had to do with, you know, like that care that you're talking about, and that scene looking at that boy across the street. And that's the care that was given to each of these participants in the film. We like to call them participants instead
Yeah. Well, you know, I came to filmmaking kind of by way of an accident. I enlisted in the Marines, and my recruiter suggested I become a filmmaker. So from there, I was taught a very kind of militaristic way of making a film. It wasn't until I got into college, my first semester of college at Columbia, that I felt like I needed to make a film to say something to the world about who I am. You know, which when I say it out loud feels so like, you know, why would anyone care about who you are? But I'd been through a lot to get to that stage in my life. And when I got to college and I saw like how big a deal the end of a first semester at an Ivy League school is, like I went to Columbia, and at the end of the first semester, like it was like a parade. Like parents would show up, and there'd be pets and stuffed animals and banners, and people were just like so excited to have these kids come home. And it made me think about, 'cause at that point I'd spent 15 years away from my mother's house, yet I hadn't quite settled into a home that resembled ones that they were going back to. So, you know, what is home? Why is home? All these questions I would ask myself. And then one day I was on the pier and walking to the pier from 7th Avenue down to the water. And as I was walking down and seeing some, familiar faces, similar faces to mine, and the warmth that they kind of had for me as I was walking, I realized that home is the place where one is most deeply understood.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So right from there, and then once I got into that place, it was like, okay, I have to get a camera and I have to try to make a movie. So I tried to do what I learned in the military, and I met probably maybe like at least 30 people I interviewed initially at the beginning of the process. And then through various circumstances, people getting arrested, people moving on, people dying, all sorts of things happening, it really quickly got winnowed down to like 10. And then I met Crystal. And when I spoke to Crystal, it just felt so different from everyone. Because one, she had just gotten to the pier when we started filming. She'd only been there.
Oh, really? And how long, can you talk a little, and how long of a process was that? Was that, this was done over 5 years? So you met her in the first year, or?
First year I met. I met her, if I started filming in maybe June,
Mm-hmm.
movie for a class at Columbia. I met her maybe in July, August, like right after.
And she was fresh to the pier. She was fresh there.
Just had been there a couple of weeks. And, she spoke about wanting to be like a social worker for the community, which I found super fascinating. And I thought that maybe could be a good entryway to understanding how chosen families are formed. Like how is it that all of us who are from all these different backgrounds, all these different places, who end up in the same place, how are we so quick to form family with one another? And when Crystal said I'm a social worker, moms do social work, all sorts of people do social work, besides those who have the official title. So I committed to following her. But I tried to film her like a military film. So it'd be like, you've got to sit here, you've got to look this way, and the light has to be here, and you have to answer these 5 questions this way.
And she's like, I'm doing none of that. Right?
That's exactly what she said. She said, I will not allow you to film my life unless you are my friend. The camera has to be my friend. You have to be my friend. If I get caught by a cop, you're on my side. If I'm hungry, you make sure I eat. You have to be my friend, and then I'll let you film my life. And then from there, I feel like that demand is what made me into a filmmaker, which transitioned me from being a person who kind of got in a craft in the Marines to a person who was using an artistic medium to say something about the human condition.
Mm-hmm.
It really resonated because I needed that, and I've had that at times in my integral moments in my life that allowed me to get out of homelessness. So to know that someone who had come from where I come from was able to articulate that need.
Yeah.
Made me want to just dive in and just radically change how I thought of making the film. So it comes from a place of, we are kind of thrown into the skin of oppression. One of my favorite films, Algiers. In Battle of Algiers, your first person point of view as both the rebel and the French occupier during the Algerian War for independence from French. Yeah. So I wanted to really use that film as a guide, kind of like Paris is Burning meets Battle of Algiers, where we drop in to this Black queer nighttime world. And as a homeless kid would need to talk to people, to get to know who's around, to see what's possible, so too does the audience. As the police officer interrogates you, that kid, so too does it do the audience, so that you kind of get to feel what it's like to be in the skin of oppression.
Yeah, especially, sorry to interrupt. Just to...
No,
it's good. No, this is a good flow. Because I thought, when I was watching it, you were also, and I'm just really praising, you did such a beautiful job, both of you, because I know it takes a lot of work as a producer to do. I'm not forgetting about you, Chester, trust. You had that guy come in from Wall Street, the stranger that just sort of weirdly felt entitled to invade your frame and to invade their space. Those sorts of encounters, you clocked a lot, you know what I mean? They just felt, that sort of when you say occupying, that was really beautiful. That was, to me, I thought it made a really relevant point Like, what did you do with like when that guy comes in and he talks crazy about Obama and just like, what, like you were lovely. You were so kind. I would have been like, anyway, that's why you're you. But tell me about that.
This is the benefit of editing. So, you know.
You're like, cause I let him have it. No, no, tell me, cause like I was like, you were having a great moment, like we were getting introduced, you know what I mean, to Crystal and her crew, and like all of that stuff, and then he just sat down. So what happened? Can you? I mean,
yeah, sure.
The context of Occupy, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is the thing, right? Like, very often when you watch like documentaries about queer Black subcultures, it's as if they exist on their own. That you rarely see an interaction with the mainstream white world, and very rarely do you see how that world really thinks about us. When, like, you know, it's very easy in like some of these more academic kind of interview focused documentaries, it's easy to sit down and be like, oh, you know, Blacks are equal and women should get paid the same as men and all these things. But it's, you know what I mean, the things that people are supposed to.
But in real life, they're like, I was just kidding.
Say so, but in real life, right, you know, it's like, oh, you're just some Black people sitting outside, and I live in Wall Street, and I live on the 50th floor, and my view is the entire city, and now I'm gonna come and this little strip of light by the water, I'm just gonna come and sit down and see what it's like to live on Earth with you. And
you know, no, but I mean, like, that was really, he really did.
Literally what he did. We were filming.
Chester was like, he did. He did.
I mean, he just walked in.
You just walked in.
I mean, what did you think?
It's like walking into your house. It's like somebody, like, because for a lot of those people, the pier is like their living room. This is where they socialize. This is where they build these bonds that, you know, as
family. It's like you're right. Yeah, it's family. Yeah.
You're like someone coming into your living room. Fuck what you're saying. I need to talk to you about why you're here. Like, who are you? And it's like he interrogated them, and
totally
what was happening, and didn't respect it.
Right, and they were so kind. They were you know, either kind. This is what I'm asking you: were they being kind, or were they just like over it? You know, after a while, you get so exhausted about explaining some shit to people, where you're just like, they'll go away soon.
They sometimes they listen to the difference to try to understand why this person is treating them the way that they are. Like, Crystal has true compassion. Like, Crystal is more compassionate than that white man who interrupted her conversation, because of she would show him compassion that he necessarily would not show her. And, you know, she oozes it, and you can feel it too from
She's
her.
Such a good person. I mean, and just on that tip, how did you walk through that experience with Crystal going to see her family? Like that, I mean, like, I don't know, you know what I mean? Being Black, like, I love, like, you treated everyone with such care. You didn't judge them. You know what I mean? You showed them, you know, you let them speak their piece. Like, every shot, like the boy at the end, like, you know, everybody's like, you will tell the world who you are, right? But how did you do that where you saw her family not misgender her? You know what I mean? And really disrespect her in the name of God, right? You know? How did you walk through that?
Well, I mean, first of all, at that point, Crystal and I have been filming for almost 2 years. And
okay.
Like I said before, I came by way of this film by a need to express something, and without the knowledge of what that exactly was.
Okay.
So after 2 years, I kind of found myself, I'd run out of my list of questions to ask, and I still felt like I didn't really know who Crystal was. So I went back to the interviews and just, you know, did a little bit of notes, and I realized that her mother kept coming up, and even further, that our mothers kept coming up.
Mm.
We were always talking about losing our moms and losing connection to our moms. So I proposed to Crystal. I said, hey, Crystal, what if we could go back to see your mom? Would you be interested in doing that? She's seen you as a woman before. And Crystal was like, no, she hasn't. So I asked her that maybe in like October, and around Thanksgiving, she came back and she was like, okay, I thought about it. Yeah, I want to do it. You have to buy me bundles. You have to, yes, which, you know, people who know me well know I like to play in wigs and hair and stuff. So when she said that, I was like, okay.
I love you like this. I was like, and teach me. You're like, I know, my wig game is on. I'm like, good job. Love you, Elegance. Yes.
Yeah, you buy the bundles in a bag at the hair supply store, and then you get a bunch of them, and then you can cornrow your hair and sew it in, or you can make a wig out of it, whatever. And that's what bundles are. So Crystal wanted me to make sure her hair was hooked up to see her family.
She wanted hair, nails.
Yeah.
You know what's interesting though, but like okay, sorry, but like in the doc, she has a conversation with her mother, and her mother is clearly like, I don't want to see you like that. I don't want, I remember how you shot it. I love I'm reminding you. You know, where she has a conversation, and clearly her mother's like, I don't bundle, like, is not going to accept any of that. But she had the courage to be like, I'm going to show up as she really was. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I think Crystal loves her mother. Crystal in her love for her mother, she allowed her mother to disrespect her because she respects her mother.
Yeah, that's very Black family. Mm-hmm.
Black family, and I think that Crystal's love for her mother exceeds even her gender. It exceeds, it's bigger than all, because of Crystal appreciates that her mother brought her into the world and didn't abort her, did everything she could to take care of her, as a child, to lead her up the right way. And her mother fell short sometimes, but Crystal understood that, and she has, to this day, still loved her mother unconditionally, which is also really beautiful about all of that. Like mother's causing this pain, and her mother's hurt because of the secret that's been kept for her, that she's felt like has been kept for her all of this time. Crystal musters up the strength, to go there and face this head on. She borrowed clothes from Elegance in order to see her mother.
Oh.
And her mother said, when she said, I don't have boy clothes, where am I going to get boy clothes from, Mom? And she borrows Elegance's hoodie, and she covers her head. And it's also sad because of, you see her aunt too struggling to love her mother.
Yes, the whole thing. Like, church was very,
at the same time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And they're trying to, and you see her trying to be diplomatic, but still, most Black people worship a white Jesus. Let's just be honest.
Don't get me started. Okay. Yes, that's true. Like, the worship the oppressed. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Blonde-haired, blue-eyed Jesus.
Sure, in a sense of, and her mother and her aunt believes that treating their kids this way will get them to heaven. And that is,
see, I don't know if I really believe that when it comes to homophobia in the Black community. I do think that I don't want to get too deep into religion, because at the end of the day, religion is just the weeds. Everybody needs a form of faith to get through life. And sure, right. I need a form of faith as my thing, but I've got my own that you could easily do as well. So, but what I will say is that I think that this moment we're having, almost 500 years after slavery, where as a culture, we're ready to contend with the idea of white supremacy and racism. I think words really matter. And I think this is maybe more the thing that we're talking about for all these years, a culture within which, the color of one's skin immediately is supposed to delimit a certain kind of outcome in life. And for Crystal's family and a lot of Black families, the consequences of acting outside of the procreation, Christian, make babies, make life, be closer to God thing is tough in a white supremacist environment, because you don't have descendants who will endure and survive in spite of this, aggressive posturing of the state. And you also don't have, you lose access. Like I think sometimes Black folks feel like, they're losing Black men everywhere. Cops are killing Black men, and,
jail, it goes to the prison system. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Trans identity and homosexuals, and all they want to do is just take our Black men from us. And I think, sure, Christianity might be the lens through which that is kind of rationalized, but at the end of the day, Christian or not, the folks who are spewing this point of view, they're coming from an environment, from a cultural history where they have been enslaved, and every aspect of their identity has been formed and directed at them by the person, the institutions that enslaved them, religion being one, government being another, and all of these things are at play in these moments with Crystal and her family. And I try to I hope that people are listening to what they say in the film and doing them and adding it up as they watch it. Like, oh, this is what happens when you kick your children out.
Spare the rod, spoil the child. Totally. No, I understand. And I don't want to just be clear, because I don't want anyone to come back at us and to say we're at no point are we saying that Christianity equals homophobia. Like, that's not what we're saying at all. No, I'm just making sure, like, we're not saying that. We're talking this particular sense and this particular context and this particular things. I'm shutting that down before it even gets started, right? You know, I'm sorry, let me take that. I'll be like, I'm just going to shut that down. But just going back more to the original, sort of situation. So in that, so she sees her family, she's super compassionate, going back to what you guys said earlier. She's really compassionate and empathetic and sort of lets it slide. But then we see her with her brothers, right? Is that and they're young. Like, that gave me hope, where they're like, they gendered her, right? You know what I mean? They were like, and she's like the little, little sister. And I've been the little sister. That's how we all get treated. Do you know what I mean? They're like, like, that was nice, right? Or did I misread that?
I cried when I saw that. Because the way her brothers loved on her when I first saw that scene, the contrast of seeing how the women in her family treated her to how the men in her family treated her,
right?
I was like, wow, this is love. They're like, you mess with Crystal, you mess with us.
Yeah.
And that right there, like, I wish I grew up with someone who protected me like they protect her. And, you know, beautiful.
Well, it's complicated.
It is complicated, but I'm saying that moment, though.
Oh, I love Elegance. Elegance is like, there's more to that story. There's more to that story. Okay.
I mean, I think the thing that I wanted to do with this film comes from a very, like, radical place, right? Like,
yes.
And what I wanted to do with this film is create the movie that I wished existed when I was 14 or 15, so that my mom could kind of sit down and have the conversations in the film that her and I never got the chance to have.
Mm-hmm.
We're both reacting to this system that has been set up against us. And I hope that, you know, people who have homophobic feelings, transphobic feelings, who have kids in the foster care system watch this film and look at Deshawn's life and say, okay, maybe what I'm thinking is, let me take a step back from this way I'm seeing my child and look at the systems that have formed us. That's really what I want people to do. And I want people to just take a step back. I want Black families to take a step back. I want them to look at this film and think about it just a second. Do we need to kick this child out for this reason?
Mm-hmm.
You know?
I don't think there's ever a reason. I mean, that's my personal feeling, that, like, you ever kick out a child, period. But also, you know, I love that that's what you want people to walk away with. But what you've also delivered in addition to is you've delivered, you were amplifying a voice that rarely gets to be heard. And they get to talk about themselves in a very humanistic, complicated way. Like, I love of, like, I just boosted it. And then, you know what I mean? Or I just took a little thing. And then, like, you got to see all the things, like, you know, and there's like, and then, like, stole it. And it was like sort of light, and like, oh, like, but that hustle is hard. That must be, when he said, it's exhausting. It's exhausting having to do that. Right. And then saying that, like, can you talk, and then, like, how did you respond? Or I know it's interesting when you're a documentary filmmaker, there's a line of, like, how involved you get with your participants or not, you know, but it felt to me that they were part of your family. Like, you loved them, it felt like you loved them. What did you say when he was talking about, if I got HIV, I'd have a bed like that?
Well, Deshawn is a real special person to me, because at a certain point in filming, he would always kind of, like, appear and disappear.
Yeah.
I'd say, like, the most profound and thought-provoking things and then be gone for 4 months and then back again. And I told Crystal this, and she was like, well, did you look him up on the prison system? Did you look up his name and see if he was incarcerated? And I was like, no. She took me to the website, and there he was.
No.
Yes. So I went to
really.
Yeah. And I went to go visit him, and he asked me, he was like, Elegance, you were homeless, I'm homeless, I am homeless. I'm smart. Could you help me? Could you please mentor me so I can get out of this situation? Which, I mean, trust me, I'm a very bookish kind of person. So when I started, I read a lot of documentary books and watched a lot of talks on YouTube about how to relate to what's typically called a subject.
Right.
It was hard for me. I couldn't say no because I'd done that in the past myself, and someone did it for me, and it helped me to change my life. So at that point, I resolved to stop filming him, and he, for half a summer, was an assistant on the film. I don't want to get into too deep in the woods, but a lot of things happened. I had an office that was broken into. I had equipment of mine that had reappeared on the street, had been sold.
Duly noted. Right, yeah.
It did not go the way I expected it to go. But in the middle of all that work, I remember one day he said to me, he said, Elegance, I know you want me to go to college and stuff, and you went to college and you did the military. I know what you did. But for me, I don't know if it's really possible. I don't know if it really can happen. If I do all the right things, that I'm going to end up like you. It's like, maybe if I saw everything on fire, I could, once I know it's all gone, then maybe I can believe there's a chance for me to keep going. And it just stuck with me. What he said, it stuck with me forever. To see what's happening right now around George Floyd, and to think about what Shawn had to say, I wanted to make a film, and to make this film, I had to make a community.
No, I mean, because one of the things I know that we're winding down, and I want to talk about and you brought it up a little bit about George Floyd and how this, and to Shawn, it felt like that sort of bleak hopelessness, that comes from exhaustion and just not seeing a better way, and then also it's not pointed or spotlight on it, but you felt the presence of police throughout the entire movie. And you made this movie over 5 years, and it just premiered recently, right? In the summer of 2019. Okay, so let's just be so it's not this is not, you just made this last week. Can you talk about that, of how the police presence, and how that's affecting perhaps or the lens of what's happening today?
I think that what you see in PIER Kids is the end of the gentrification of the Christopher Street Pier. Proof of this is we look at a movie like Paris is Burning. Pretty much every exterior in that film is shot on the pier, or either on the pier or in Harlem. So compare what you see on the pier in Jenny's film, which is 1990, to what PIER Kids right now, and you'll see that things are the space has been, gentrification means ethnic cleansing. Means ethnic cleansing. It means that there are populations that need to be cleared. You can rise so that people who are worth more can move in. So that means that if you are Black and you are outside and you are in a group, you are a threat. You represent the devaluation of property, and therefore you are high on the radar of police. So, I really bristle at any notion that, today is any more filled with police brutality than it was, 8 years ago making. And I think what you see is again, you're in the skin of oppression in this film. You're me in this space too, and I'm them. So when a cop comes and I'm having a conversation, no matter where I'm having, I could be in Beverly Hills talking about a movie. If a cop, I'm going to stop for a second, turn my head, see if this cop is looking at me, and then once I've settled that he's not, I'll return back to my conversation, still keeping an eye on him, just in case he feels like taking my life.
Yep.
And, that's how the police are in this film. They are ever present. Their job is to delimit Black people's presence in public space, in downtown spaces in New York City. If you want to talk to that.
I agree with you.
Exactly. I was gonna say, I'm like, I think you dropped the mic, sir. I think that was like, that's exactly what we needed to get to. So, but before, no, it was really it was a really strong presence, but it was always that sort of like, it was always there, like at the back of your neck, right? You know what I mean? And that's how these young people are living, and that's how we've always lived, right? And just, anyway, that's a conversation for another day, but beautifully, beautifully put. I want to talk about now really quickly before time runs out. What is happening with this movie? Where are we? People have compared it to Paris is Burning. People, like, everybody knows, like, it won a bunch of awards. Like, it's an amazing movie. Where is it? Where can we see it? What's happening?
Right now.
Oh, that was good. You're like, you knew that question was coming. Don't act like I'm all of a sudden throwing something at you. You know what I mean? This movie should be seen widely. Yeah. Where is it?
Right now we're playing a ton of film festivals for Pride season. We're looking for a distributor. We've not been picked up yet from a distributor.
We're looking for distribution. I think this is a wonderful, like, I'm like, yes, great. There you go. I'm like, I'm leading. I'm like, for fuck's sake. No. Keep going. I'm like, yeah, okay. So you're looking for distribution.
We're looking for distribution. We really see this film being on a streaming platform because we want as many eyes as possible to see Hulu and Netflix and Amazon. I think that, like, parents need to see this film, or even a PBS, because PBS is free. And, parents really need to see this so that our homeless population decreases. And that, we take responsibility for our kids and for the world. And, that's important to us. And that's the next step for this film, is for us helping people who go through similar things like this and really, really, really finding distribution for this film. Elegance did something revolutionary. He gave Crystal, Casper, and Shawn each a percentage of the film.
Yes, good job. It's all about leverage, and that's wonderful. That's really wonderful.
Me, what this is like, I just like, it's tough because probably better than most, probably better than me, like how diplomatic one has to be as a creator when addressing the tastemakers and gatekeepers of the industry, because they are people too, they are human too, and they have feelings. However,
I love you with everything that I have. Mm-hmm.
But it's one of those things where I'll never forget, we were at a festival. First off, we reached out, we had some great institutional support. RIP for now, Tribeca Film Institute, who gave us our finishing funds to do the movie. Thanks to the hundreds of concerned people and film lovers who supported our Kickstarter to help us get started. But at the end of the day, what we are coming up against, I was at Tribeca, and there's this documentary woman who told me flat out, the reason why you're having a hard time selling your film is because your film is not about celebrities, right? Your film is not like a bio piece about famous American designer or about an actress who won an Oscar and died tragically, right? Your film is
or global warming
or any of the things. Your film is about, poor Black, gay, and trans kids. And I had another person in my school, teacher of mine, tell me when I was editing the film, well, white people want to watch movies that assure them that they're not racist. And when I look at your footage, I see Black people living a kind of way that as a white person, I expect. And I don't want to feel racist, so it's hard to really take in the rest, mind you. So I guess what I'm getting at is that, there are unspoken kind of segregatory boundaries around how successful or mainstream documentaries. I mean, first of all, the assumption is with any that you're making it for a white audience, that to make films, documentaries, cool indies for Black people. And when I say cool, I mean like, the movies that Harmony Korine makes, right? You don't really see a lot of Black folks making movies like that. You see a lot of Black folks referencing movies like that. But in terms of like how Blacks are depicted on screen and kind of like the parameters of what what's encouraged and marketable to depict, very often what we get is like, basically, you can be going through the worst Black pain of your life as long as you are singing and dancing at some point. As long as you show the industry that you can transcend this pain and achieve something of cultural value that would make me care about your pain, right? Then your pain is worthy of consumption and distribution. When we kind of live in the blues and privilege the idea of survival and the omnipresent, unending, enduring power of these forces that hold us down, and we celebrate our resistance to those forces, and that resistance is as powerful, if not more powerful, than some sort of pseudo sense of triumph over those over those forces, right? That's where PIER KIDS lives. This is not a film about, it's not hoop dreams. I mean, we're not watching, Black kids bound over each other into.
I hear you, Alec. I mean, I'm sorry, keep going. I mean, I feel you, but I'm going to push back a little bit just because.
I mean, that's what I was told. That's what I'm saying.
I don't know. I believe. I hear you. Chester's like, stop talking. No, okay. No. I'm fucking. That's okay. Like, I mean, I say when I push back, and I push back respectfully, because what you've made is a film that it's not a movie. Some of those things were movies that you mentioned. This is a film. And this is something I think that transcends a lot of those things that you were talking about. And especially in this context of now where we are, where it's there might be a possibility where people are white, Black, non-Black, Indigenous, whatever. Everybody's ready to acknowledge of like, this is what's happening, people. This is what I think you've hit this moment. And it's important. Do you know what I mean? And also, and here's the other thing too, like, and I will pledge to like do my best and I think the people who are watching this movie needs to be seen and it needs to be distributed. And I would highly doubt if this time next month, you don't have a few, you know what I mean? A few offers. No, I mean it. Like, cause it's really, especially, and it's because it's sorry, I keep repeating myself, but it's quite elevated and it's Black pain. It's all of those things, but it must be seen. And I think by any means necessary, personally.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the chance and the opportunity to be able to tell our stories. And I'm grateful for the support of organizations like Outfest and Frameline and folks like this who allow voices like ours the platform. It's a treat and a pleasure to have the microphone. I just wanted to, acknowledge all of the support that we've had and thank Outfest for this platform and to say like, it's not to sound angry or bitter or any of that. It's just
you don't sound angry or bitter. I think you're telling a truth. You know what I mean? I just don't think it's the truth anymore, but it's a truth, 100%. Yeah.
Accountable for what they believed, even when they change to the next thing. People need to acknowledge the journey it took them to go from how they thought at one time to how they think right now, especially if they're acknowledging that those thoughts were somehow mistaken, right? How do you learn from something without acknowledging that it happened? So, that's kind of where I'm coming from. But at the end of the day, I believe that this is a story about families.
Yeah.
This is a story about what it means to be an American. And this is a story about the gay rights movement. This is an interrogation of that movement, right? Black trans women made it possible for us to get married and go to the military.
Yes.
All the things that we do to survive this lifestyle that we live, Black trans women laid down the groundwork. And how do we look if 50 years later, people who look like them still live like this? What is a gay rights movement? And a film like this, I think, what I'm trying to do is fill a gap. We've neglected working class people of color in our conversation about gay rights. We have not gone to the ghetto. We have not gone to the spaces that we have cut off from all sorts of resources, intellectual and material, right? To make sure that our message is being heard where it needs to be heard most. And that's what this film is meant to correct. It is not to say that it's only for Black people, but if you are an ally to Black people and Black queer people in particular,
yes,
that can do some of the work that you don't know how to do because you were not born into this.
This is also a film that needs to be taught.
I agree.
Yeah. Well, hopefully you'll download it and watch it, buy a ticket. I don't know how this is going to...
No, it's going to happen. No, I'm going to say, I think we should make this pledge that I think you've talked about this movie beautifully. Both of you talked about it beautifully. I'm really honored to be working with you. I'm honored to even have been having this type of conversation with you. And I think that my granny says, a closed mouth doesn't get fed. I think that we need to have this movie out there and movies like that and keep it going. And I think we're gonna get this movie distribution. And I think that we should end on that. Yes? How you feel?
Follow me at Elegance Bratton on Instagram, Elegance21 on Twitter.
You can also follow me at Algernal, ALGERNAL, and you can follow PIER KIDS
on all platforms.
On all platforms.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Happy Pride, Black Lives Matter.
But yes, to all of that.
Black trans lives matter.
Absolutely.
They matter.